Okay, well, thank you both. At this point, we're going to have public comment on issues number 1 through 3. Please line up at the microphone. Now, this is only on issues 1 through 3. We'll take issues 4 through 6 at the end of the agenda today, but issues 1 through 3, public comment now. For those wishing to make public comment,
thank you.
For those who wish to address the committee, a couple of words of advice. First of all, always at the beginning, state your name, and if you represent an organization, the organization or entity that you represent. Secondly, be aware that we want to hear everything you have to say. We have very limited time in this hearing. So each person testifying will be limited to 1 minute. 1 minute. Now, if you have more information than that, that's great. We ask you to provide that in writing to the sergeants today or to send it to the committee tomorrow, next week, whenever you want to do that. So voluminous information is okay. What we're doing in public comment are just the headlines. So just 1 minute, and I will cut you off when you hit the minute. With that, please begin.
Deneen Micheletti, representing the California Alternative Payment Program Association. Very briefly, you have a handout before you. We would like to also echo that we don't support the governor's proposals at this time. What we're seeing from alternative payment programs is many of the changes from the recent years, rate increases, slot increases, which we celebrate that you've done, have actually sort of harmed unintentionally the families. Alternative payment programs are now serving caseloads, 1 caseworker to every 185 families. So what's happening is if we proceed too quickly and make changes, the families who come through our door and need services are not going to be truly educated about how do we connect them to the preschool and the wraparound services and all of those services that help break the poverty stressors and move them through. So we ask, in addition to the stakeholder recommendations put out with AB 104, recommendations moving forward are great, but we're concerned that there wasn't a lot of information and looking on how you deliver without actually harming the families.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Donna Snaringer with the Child Care Alliance of Los Angeles. I just wanted to address issue 2, the stakeholder groups on streamlining, and put some context to the fact that these groups were seated to provide relief to a strained system, not to find additional cost savings. And as we look toward May revision, we will be watching very closely that the intent of relief is what is actually brought up.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Sherry Springer, and I'm with Californians for Quality Early Learning, CEQUAL. It's a membership association of private child care center-based providers, and we support the Women's Caucus and their asks for additional rate slots, an increase in the SMI, and the 12-month eligibility, and of course the support of the mixed delivery. Most of the care in California is done by the private sector, and many private providers also have Title V contracts. They provide care through the voucher system, private pay, and are part of the QRAS. And currently, we typically are not at any of the planning and discussions and feel that we should be a part of any discussions going forward in reforms or anything like that. And that California is a very diverse state, and the child care needs are very diverse, and that is what our mixed delivery system provides. And the one-size-fits-all that is being proposed, we have very huge concerns with. Thank you.
Thank you. Exactly 1 minute. Very good. Next speaker.
Good morning, Elsa Jacobson with LAF. We are eager to work with the governor, but feel that any kind of refinement of the state's multifaceted early education system needs to occur outside the budget process and over a longer period of time than has been proposed. We're also concerned about potential negative impacts of the governor's proposal on the mixed delivery system and preschool access, and have included our comments about those issues to your staff. We feel that what is needed right now are significant investments in reimbursement rates, slots, and quality measures, particularly the ECE workforce, and we applaud the Legislative Women's Caucus proposal of $800 million to bolster the ECE system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Lisa Wilkin from the Child Development Consortium of Los Angeles, and I want to push back on the concept that eliminating the Title V centers will increase parent choice. If you look at the Title V centers as the charter schools of the early childhood community, we do in fact provide all the same benefits that a public school preschool provides with the same requirements, but it is a choice for parents to go somewhere besides the public school that they may attend, because our hours tend to be longer. We tend to serve more days. And so I just want to make sure that there's an understanding that eliminating the Title V centers will actually limit the choices that parents have, not enhance them.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Joseph with California Children's Academy. We've served infants, toddlers, and preschools for the past 45 years in Los Angeles County. And I wanted to stress, CCA serves over 700 children and over close to 200 staff every day. The voucher system will close center-based programs like ours. We cannot budget on a promise. Moving from the contract system to the voucher-based system is a step backwards, not forwards. The grant-based system that was mentioned earlier would push us forward. Not to mention, having us move to the voucher system may jeopardize our CCDBG funding. We ask that you support the Women's Caucus, especially the recommendations on the SRR, and reject the governor's block grant proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Alice Burton. I'm with the California Coalition for Equity in Early Care and Education. We are Title V programs in high-cost counties in San Francisco, other Bay Area counties, LA, and San Diego. These are the programs that serve the families, the Rosie the Riveter families that Senator Hannah Beth Jackson mentioned this morning. They've been long-standing. In fact, they're the most imperiled now. Their Title V, their staff meet higher educational requirements, offer better ratios, and yet the rates are too low to support the staff and give them a living wage. And the proposal on the table from the governor would just further undermine those programs without additional investment. So thank you very much.
And thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Monica Walters. I'm the CEO of WE Children's Services in San Francisco. We're an early Head Start, and Title V provider organization. And you have before you some pictures of our teachers from San Francisco State University who wanted to put their voice here for you. We represent, those women who are predominantly women of color, who are working day in and day out to provide quality care for our children in high-quality centers. And I just want to applaud Senator Mitchell and the Women's Caucus for their courageous investment request for $800 million. We need every bit of that investment back into our system, and we really appreciate that support. And again, our Title V providers really need your help.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Liz Burns. I'm the Program Director for Community Action Marin Child Development Programs. I want to talk on two issues. One is we've been given notice by our Community Action Marin agency that we have 12 months to come up with a $500,000 deficit, which we are forced to deal with every year just to keep our doors open. We're a Title V program, and the standard reimbursement rate is going to be a disaster for us, and it means that 588 children and families in Marin would lose childcare, as well as 120 staff people. And the other thing I wanted to add is today is that the National Day of Protests for Low-Income Workers. There's going to be protests all over the country with McDonald's, and probably about 40% of our workers get the same wages as McDonald's. We've had a 2% raise in 10 years for our workers. So we're respectfully asking you to do the right thing. This is a social justice issue, it's a workers' rights issue, and it's a quality issue. And we would like your support with the $800 million proposition the Women's Caucus is presenting.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Nina Boothie with the California Child Development Administrators Association. We're a statewide California nonprofit organization that supports publicly funded child development programs. From our perspective, similar to all the comments before, we appreciate the highlight on early education issues. However, we feel like this is a real policy discussion and should not be happening in the budget process. As such, and for many other reasons, we are in opposition to the governor's both block proposal as well as the voucherization proposal. proposal. We are in very strong support, and again, also, Senator Mitchell, thank you for your lead on the Women's Caucus, helping to shape the letter that was put out, because we really do believe that a number of the recommendations in there are very much needed right now in this year as we look forward to some of the other streamlining pieces, especially in terms of rates, both on the RMR as well as the SRR, as well as the increase in slots for our youngest, our infants and toddlers. So thank you very much for that. Look forward to working with the committee as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Khadija Alam Javed with the Advancement Project. We also have major concerns with the governor's block grant proposal and ask that you reject the proposal as it stands today. But we look forward to more details as the May revise comes out. Our concerns with the current proposal, that it includes absolutely no additional funding. In fact, it moves around funds, which would result in eligible students being kicked out of existing programs like the TK program, including my own son. Instead, we support the Women's Caucus proposal, so thank you, the Women's Caucus, and especially Senator Mitchell, for your leadership on that. We absolutely support the $800 million in additional funding for this year, including the details that came out yesterday and that were released yesterday, which include meaningful funding for improving quality, increasing access by adding additional slots, increasing reimbursement rates, both SRR and RMR, and ensuring continuity of care and updating the income eligibility, income guidelines. We would ask that you go a little further and reinstate the cell as well.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
If you have anything further, please give it to us in writing.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Thank you. Terry Burns, on behalf of the California School Boards Association. And I'll associate my comments with Ms. Goins. Everything she said is happening all over the state of California in a variety of places. So we share her concerns. We also would like to agree with Senator Mitchell very strongly that this is a deep policy conversation that needs a substantial dialogue so that we can avoid unintended consequences. And finally, we'd like to thank Senator Stone. We agree with you. We should be basing our decision on current expenses and current data, not on data that's 10 years old. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Robin Layton, Educational Enrichment Systems, Inc., a nonprofit in San Diego County. I have two of the 22 schools are in Senator Block's district, so just wanted to let you know. I agree with, of course, all of my colleagues that have just spoken, as well as on the panel. Of our 130 budgeted positions, I currently have 37 vacancies. Our most recent loss was to a teacher that has a bachelor's degree that went to Costco for $17 an hour. I respectfully request that you oppose the governor's proposed block grant as well as the voucher proposal, support the Legislative Women's Caucus $800 million request. Moving to all vouchers dismantles the current mixed delivery system, eliminates parental choice, and our 22 preschools in San Diego would close. I agree with Senator Mitchell that we are not a broken system, we're just under-resourced. In San Diego, our 100 families and their children are not in a broken program, but our teachers work in an under-resourced program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Chris Lev Twombly with the California State Alliance of YMCAs. No Inc., but we are nonprofits throughout the state. Our Ys work with families around the state through the state preschool program and a number of other linked services and programs. We certainly concur with colleagues here today that it's important to not only preserve but enrich the mixed delivery system, and that the discussing this through the budget process really kind of structures the wrong conversation in the wrong way. I would like to recognize the efforts of the Department of Finance through the stakeholder process. Have been very open and genuine dialogue, and certainly the comments today reflect that they've listened to the stakeholders. That said, the budget still is the wrong process, and even if we see an improved proposal in the May revise, we're still concerned that that would have been arrived too quickly. So we respectfully encourage the committee to reject the proposal, and let's put families and children first. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, committee chairs and members. My name is Michelle McKay Underwood, and I'm speaking this morning on behalf of the Coalition for Adequate Funding for Special Education to raise the issue of early childhood education for children with disabilities. And thank you very much, Senator Stone, for bringing up these children in the child care system. For school districts are mandated to provide special education services for preschoolers, so those are our 3- and 4-year-olds, and the state currently provides $0 for those services, $0. The federal government provides $97 million, but the actual cost of those services is 5 times that much. So we want to make sure that children with special needs are included in the conversation around funding preschool. We are sponsoring legislation to ask for $150 million. That provides about $3,000 per preschooler with disabilities. We know some of those cases can cost $40,000 and upwards, so this is a drop in the bucket, but we think it's really important that this conversation includes children in preschool that have special needs and disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. Monique Ramos on behalf of the Early Childhood Education Coalition, which is a group of organizations that support access to high-quality early learning and care. We would like to thank the governor for his willingness to engage in this conversation, but we agree we cannot improve and revise our current system within the short time of the budget window. In addition, we don't believe we can undertake any major reforms without a real investment in rates, and rates equals quality in our programs. And we do support the Women's Caucus $800 million ask. We delivered a letter to your offices on February 19th that outlines our principles about what we would need to see in any revised system, and would recommend that you look at those. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Erin Gable on behalf of First 5 California, align myself with Ms. Ramos's comments as we're a signatory on those 2 letters, as well as just to highlight the panels today really present the complexity of this issue and the 3 deficits from which we believe the foundation of our early learning system is suffering that need to be addressed in any kind of comprehensive, what we would hope be a robust policy deliberation of a proposal that's addressing adequate per child funding in order to have the kinds of sufficient supports we need in compensation across the state, addressing all of the access issues that were highlighted today, and accessing the true other barriers to having school districts be in a lead around preschool, which is looking at quality and other kinds of infrastructure supports. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. Alexis Fernandez from the First 5 Association, representing the 58 county commissions. And so, echoing what many of our colleagues have already said, appreciate the discussion, think it should probably happen or very much happen outside of the budget process. And we would encourage also a consideration of all the quality components, including the existing QRIS. 58 counties are implementing the QRIS currently, and we think that should be the framework for our quality efforts.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. Jeff Vaca, representing Riverside County Superintendent of Schools and the school districts in Riverside County. We applaud the administration for its outreach efforts and efforts to get input and feedback on their proposal. We share the concerns that have been stated by many regarding the timing. Roughly 2 months from today, you'll be sending a budget to the legislature will be sending a budget to the governor. We're skeptical that the many issues and questions that have been raised today can be fully addressed. And we urge both the legislature and the administration to take the time needed to develop a program that truly meets the needs of quality, of access, and also the ability to accommodate growth, which is especially important for a growing county like Riverside County. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Enrique Ruacho here on behalf of the Los Angeles Unified School District, and we have expressed some concerns regarding the governor's proposed block grant. First off, we think that the funding cap is too low. The block grant approach doesn't allow us for room for expansion of our early education programs, given the growth and need for those programs. And finally, we believe that funding should be reliable and it should be done on a per student basis to allow us to meet the needs of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Senator Block and committee members. My name is Patty Herrera on behalf of Early Edge California. We too were signatories to the Early Education Coalition letter that you received, so I want to align my comments with my colleagues who spoke a little earlier. On behalf of Early Edge, we specifically want to underscore a couple of issues relating to the governor's Early Ed block grant proposal. We cannot emphasize enough the need for additional investments in our early education and care system, particularly as they relate to quality and the woefully underfunded reimbursement rates. There's been compelling research that's come out in the last couple of months with regard to continued need in terms of access for income-eligible children. The AIR came out with a report that identified over 33,000 income-eligible kids who are persistently underserved by the system. In addition, the Learning Policy Institute came out with their report that identified the promising 10 building blocks of quality that every preschool program should have. We urge you to look at that because that's something that we believe that we need to start laying the foundation for to make sure that the kids who do have access to our system have access to quality. And finally, one of our largest concerns about the governor's Early Ed block grant proposal is the potential displacement of children who are currently eligible to access our public education system through transitional kindergarten.
Thank you. And any further information, please provide to us. We'll get it.
Thank you, Senator Block.
Next speaker.
Good morning, Laura Magnusdottir from Community Child Care Council of Sonoma County, Inc., 4Cs. I want to echo what the panelists were talking about and all my colleagues here today. I want to highlight the issue of facilities for Title V programs. We run 11 Title V programs. Because of the low reimbursement rates, we find ourselves to have to rely on school districts and municipalities to provide free or low rent facilities to us. And every year we have to move at least one facility, playground and all, and hunt around for new facilities. And sometimes we cannot serve the children because we don't have facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I'm Linda Sato with the California Child Care Resource and Referral Network. First, I want to reiterate some of the sentiments people had about not having a major restructure as part of the budget process. But actually what I wanted to comment on was in light of Senator Stone's comment about updating the standard, the SMI, the state median income, I just wanted to share with the committee what 185% of federal poverty, because that was also one of the recommendations by the LAO, what that translates to in SMI today, which is a lot lower. And then if we updated that SMI, you could imagine that would be a lot less percentage. So I just wanted to share that with the committee, and also wanted to state that we support the Legislative Women's Caucus proposal, as Senator Jackson stated earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chair, members, Steve Henderson, representing the California School Employees Association. I'd like to echo the comments. We also have concerns with the governor's block grant approach. We are also concerned with the limited amount of time that you would have to evaluate and review this approach given the budget process. We think this should definitely be a policy discussion. To that end, CSEA would ask that the committee and the legislature consider, number one, rejecting the governor's proposal to eliminate transitional kindergarten. Number two, to ensure that there's enough money to substantiate and provide a quality preschool program. And finally, we would ask that you protect those existing workers that are currently in the system and not subject them to additional requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
A little shorter. Anna Levine from the Child Care Law Center. We echo the concerns that others have raised about the process for the block grant. I wanted to share just two brief points that are responsive to things on the questions that were raised on the agenda that I thought were good questions. And one was, how does CCDBG inform these proposals? And it's a very good point, because CCDBG requires us to have discussions about rates because we're using outdated rate surveys, which are disallowed by the federal change law. It requires us to have conversations about training and credentialing and all the kinds of standards questions that the LAO and the Department of Finance said that they would like to consider in this process. And I'm wondering why we would create two parallel processes rather than embracing our entire system and addressing the questions about how we're going to meet those monitoring and training standards, how we're going to meet those updated rates requirements in a way that embraces our entire childhood system rather than in this piecemeal and potentially redundant way. The other thing about funding, briefly.
Next speaker, please.
Okay.
Next speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Mitchell. Dion Arender on behalf of SEIU and United Domestic Workers AFSCME. We are signers onto the letter from the Early Education Coalition. We would like you to reject the governor's proposals, and we support the Women's Caucus proposal for $800 million investment. It's time to do this, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Mary Ignatius. I'm the statewide organizer for Parent Voices. Echo everything that's been said. We appreciate the governor's desire to streamline, and we actually appreciate that we feel the administration's heard us, that we need more vouchers for families because of the non-traditional hours and the work schedules and parental choice, but we never wanted that at the expense of contracted centers. Our families want parental choice. They want a mixed delivery system. I really loved how Mr. Richardson described what we need. It's not a sledgehammer, it's a screwdriver, and we feel the loosest screws are reflected in the Legislative Women's Caucus ask for slots, rates, SMI, and 12-month eligibility, and we really need to make this system whole. And just very quickly, to Anna Levine's point, when LCFF was implemented, it was implemented at an additional cost of $2.8 billion. The proposal to consolidate everything comes at no dollars, and so just to put things in context. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Samantha Corbett on behalf of Common Sense Kids Action. Over the course of the last year, Common Sense has facilitated a group of state policy leaders, business leaders, academics, and educators through its Right Start Commission. This week, we released a report, the finding of which we will hope spur to action and increase in funding for early childhood, as many of my colleagues before me have mentioned. Like many of them, and to echo the comments of Senator Mitchell, we urge the legislature to commit to the expanded and sustained resources necessary to serve California's children and family well.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank all the speakers for the concise, but more importantly, compelling comments, and the committee will take those comments into our decision-making in terms of what to do with the proposal before us. At this point, I'm going to pass the gavel to Senator Mitchell, who will chair the remainder of the meeting. Senator Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Senator Block. It's a pleasure sharing the dais with you. We're going to transition on to 5180 and 6110, Department of Social Services and Department of Education. We're on page 11 of the agenda. Let me get all my stuff out of your way. I spread out, sorry. And we could have all the panelists come together. Department of Finance, LAO, representatives from CDE, including Ms. McManus from the Early Education Support Division, and representatives from Department of Social Services, Pat Leary and Ms. Johnson. And we'll go ahead with the order as it's reflected in the agenda. We'll start with Ms. Holmes.
Jessica Holmes, Department of Finance. The governor's budget does not contain any specific proposal regarding CCDBG. However, we note that at the time the governor's budget was being developed, we had only recently received the federal draft regulations. That happened in late December, and did not have any information on any possible increases in federal funding. So that is something we're certainly looking at and considering as we move to the May revision.
Can you respond to the questions on page 13 of the agenda with regard to how much does the state currently receive in CCDBG funding? How much of this funding by percentage represents the state's total child care budget?
Yes.
And as well as if you intend for the current CCDBG to inform the structure of the May revise.
Certainly. The CCDBG funding that we currently receive is approximately $577 million ongoing. We also sometimes have one-time carryover funds, so that I think that we show about 583, and that includes that. In terms of the percentage of total state funding, it really depends on what programs you're including. Sometimes folks include state preschool funding, and that would be 16% of the total budget if that's included. However, because state preschool does not receive any federal CCDBG funding, some folks don't include that. If you just look at the non-98 programs, that's going to be about 26%. In terms of and please forgive me if I forget one of your questions. In terms of the CCDBG impact, or how does it impact or inform the structure of the governor's budget proposals?
Well, for May revised, because you opened by saying that you got it too late for it to inform the January proposal. Now we have it, now we're clear what the feds want, so how will it then be incorporated into the May revised request?
I can't give you any guarantees on the May revision at this time because it's still something that we're working on, in the process of working on. However, we're still considering, it's not likely that we're going to receive much, if any, additional funding through the federal CCDBG block grant. So that definitely makes it difficult for us as we're considering the requirements of this. However, I think as we are having the rich conversations that we are having now regarding things like rate increases or changes in eligibility, I think those are the requirements of CCDBG are things we're taking into account as we have those discussions.
Are we at risk of losing some of the annual 577 that we get from the feds if we don't abide by their new CCDBG expectations?
That is an excellent question. It is unclear exactly what at least to us at this time, it's unclear exactly what the possible ramifications could be. There are a couple of requirements in the language. I think one is in regards, and I'll have to have Deborah, one is in regards to background checks, and that could, if we didn't comply, that could result in us losing up to our 5% admin set aside, which is a small piece. However, in terms of getting clear guidance from the feds as to exactly what's at stake, that has not been provided to us at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Early?